incredible flavours, even better stories. One pour, 10 minutes, Aussie bourbon lovers sharing bourbon with Australia. Well, it's just so exciting, H. We're in Loretto, Kentucky, Star Hill Farm.
With a very
Heritage
special
Room.
guest.
Very special guest. We've got Dr. Blake Layfield, Master Distiller, Head of Innovation and Blending here at Maker's Mark. Thanks so much for joining us on the podcast, Blake.
Thanks so much for having us.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming all the way from Australia.
Well, we would definitely come this far for some delicious, wonderful whiskey, and you've got a wonderful, innovative new product from Maker's Mark and from your team. Tell us about what we've got in front of us.
Very exciting.
We do. So what we're going to be tasting today is Star Hill Farm wheat whiskey. This is the first time since 1953 that we've ever created a new mash bill. Wow. And this is celebrating nature as the maker and championing our ability to regenerate it. Maker's Mark is known for our wheated bourbon. Since 1953, we've only made one mash bill. It's 70% corn, 16% soft red winter wheat, and 14% malted barley. And our first innovation came in 2010 with Maker's Mark 46, which is where we take cask strength Maker's Mark, we take 10 virgin seared French oak staves, put it into that whiskey for 9 weeks at a cool temperature, and that articulated Bill Samuels Jr.'s perfect version of Maker's Mark. And why I tell that story and why it's unique is that it set the guardrails for what innovation really means for Maker's Mark. It means that flavor comes from nature, it comes from water, it comes from oak, it comes from grains, it comes from yeast, and it comes from time. How you manipulate and articulate those variables creates the diversity of products that you see on the shelf. And that flavor also comes from place. It comes from here. I get so many people that say, wow, Blake, wouldn't it be amazing to do a Maker's Mark aged in a Scotch barrel or aged in an X rum barrel or extra tequila barrel? Sure, it probably would be a really interesting flavor, but it wouldn't be something that's authentic, that's transparent, and that's truthful really for us to be leveraging someone else's flavor and not articulating what makes ours so special. So in 2016, the grandson of the founders, our managing director and 8th generation whiskey maker, Rob Samuels, my boss, he said, how do we really highlight and showcase the unique attributes of Maker's Mark? And our unique attribute is our choice of wheat. What wheat brings to the bourbon category is very different than rye. Most of the category is made with rye, and it gives a different viscosity, but it also gives a different flavor profile. So wheat gives us a sweetness and a creaminess, like a viscosity. I don't mean creamy like dairy, but a viscosity is a weight on your tongue, and it gives you a spice note that's very different than rye, whereas rye is black pepper and clove and grassy type. Our spice is more of your holiday baking spices, your cinnamons and your nutmegs. But how do we really showcase that to people? Because I can wax poetically about it, but it's best if I can show you in a liquid form. So that actually led us to create our first ever new mash bill, which was 70% wheat and 30% malted barley. And you might say, wow, why did you pick that percentage? That's kind of random. Keep in mind that our mash bill for Maker's Mark Classic Bourbon is 70% corn, 16% soft red winter wheat, and 14% malted barley. We just removed all the corn. What would happen if we took the corn out and really focused on our flavoring grains? And then Rob asked another really interesting and compelling question, which is, how do you know you've gone too far unless you go far enough? And that led us to create our second new mash bill, which is 100% malted wheat. So Star Hill Farm wheat whiskey is a blend of those two mash bills aged for between 7 and 8 years at cask strength. And what we learned from that is it creates an entirely different whiskey. You might wonder why it doesn't have red wax on it. It's because it's not a bourbon. If it's not a bourbon, it's not Maker's Mark. But it is Star Hill Farm, and this represents us continuing to push the American whiskey category forward. And we learned so much about the impact of grain, because it is a discussion within the whiskey industry. Does mash bill matter? Some people say, well, the distillation, it removes all the flavor and it's all about the oak. And what we definitively showed, for us at least, is that no, new make spirit and the mash bill absolutely matters. And then we started to really think about, well, why did our founders choose soft red winter wheat? We're starting to explore varietals of grain. And then as we started to go on some of that exploration, said, wow, well, if the varietal matters, we were getting some reports of these really great varietals in different parts of the US. We would bring them here and they would taste totally differently. Well, does terroir matter for grains? And then when it comes to terroir, is it just the environment around it, like the temperature and the rainfall, or is it the actual soil, the biology of the soil and the farming conditions? And as we started to explore all of these topics, which will be future parts of the Star Hill Farm release, we started to really understand that regenerative agriculture really not only sustains the environment, but improves the soil biology itself, which then makes more flavorful crops. And it led us to certify all of our new make spirit for Maker's Mark. In November of 2023, is certified for regenerative agriculture. And Star Hill Farm is really what we credit for us pushing forward in that sustainable manner. So let's have a little taste of nature.
Cheers.
Yeah,
Cheers.
cheers.
Amazing. I love the silence. Says a lot.
Yeah.
It noses beautifully, and we're big fans of wheat whiskies. It's so smooth and like so different to your normal, wheat whiskey.
Because I think of a wheat whiskey tasting a little bit like Helen grew up on a farm, and it tastes a little bit like you talk about stepping off a header and tasting, that kind of the real wheatiness.
Yeah, when I nose like other wheat whiskies, I get that it goes straight back to the memories of stepping off the header or helping my dad out on the farm. Whereas I find with this, it's a lot more subtle and smoother. It's beautiful.
Yeah, I get a lot of caramelization on the nose. We talked about for Maker's Mark, we have a citrusy, bright cherry type of note that tends to express itself. But in this, it's really articulating as more of like an apple type of note. So I'm getting like a lot of an apple note, and as it goes into the palate, you get that creaminess, that viscosity is really amplified. It's almost like a baked apple crunch. On the mid palate that cascades into some nice like toasted pecan notes, and you get that spice that I mentioned that's really coming out, those baking spices quite nicely on the back end.
Right.
There's like that nice warmth afterwards.
I think I'm surprised by how close it tastes to not. It doesn't taste like your sour age, but it does taste like a great bourbon almost in a way that surprised me. I was expecting something that was going to taste quite like completely different product that. I was nervous I wouldn't like it, if I'm being really honest. I was worried, wheat whiskey, is it going to be really that good? But this is unbelievable. And those fruit characteristics as well are so prevalent. It's like a lovely, fruity, rich, delicious mouthfeel. It's also so good. When you started the process, were you surprised by the way that it kind of came through, and you were kind of tasting it as it was kind of aging? Were you surprised by how it came through?
We honestly didn't know how it was going to taste, but that was why we did the work. I mean, some experiments work, some of them don't. But that's why it's called innovation. But we just during the fermentation, when you're standing over those fermenters, we've got our 8 traditional Cypress fermenters that are open top, and you can really smell what's happening. We knew this was going to be a really amazing whiskey, and as the new make spirit came off, we knew we had something there. So it goes where you're getting some of the commonalities is it is still within the American whiskey context. It does still leverage virgin charred American oak casks as the primary bit. Now we did also do some experimental casks. So there's American oak, there's French oak, there's hybrid barrels, and there's some barrels that are looking at surface area in there because this is a wheat whiskey. It's not a bourbon. So we didn't know how it was going to mature. And unlike in Maker's Mark where we rotate our barrels for consistency, we do not rotate these. So these are actually coming from the warehouse as nature is creating it. Okay, opens up a lot of opportunities for us to blend, a lot of diversity of flavor profiles for us. But the other thing to point out for this actually does carry the world's first estate whiskey certification. And what that means to your customers and consumers is that we make this product, that we mill it, we mash it, we ferment it, we distill it, we barrel it, we bottle it at this distillery, which is actually quite uncommon in today's whiskey industry where there's many NDPs or non-distillery producers where they're buying bulk from someone else, putting their label on it, so this showcases transparency and authenticity to your customers and consumers. It also means that 2/3 of the grains come from within a 75-mile radius of the distillery. I know miles don't translate to kilometers, but it's a short distance around the distillery, so you get flavor of place. So you're getting sustainability, you're getting that flavor of terroir, and that real impact. So that's what that means. And we're carrying this certification is actually through an independent third party, the University of Kentucky. It is a global whiskey certification. So you'll actually start to see this coming out of Ireland, Scotland, Mexico, the US, and Japan coming out very soon. We know there's many other people that are coming out with this.
So you get to be part of all of the process.
Yeah.
And I also heard someone mention that the proceeds from the bottle go to help other, like
Yeah.
the regenerative farming?
That's correct. So we've got the Million Acre Initiative, where I just mentioned why we think regenerative agriculture is the way, not only from an environmental standpoint, but because we think it makes the best flavored whiskey.
Yeah.
We're all about making great whiskey in the most culturally relevant and sustainable way possible. So using these proceeds to propel regenerative agriculture forward, because if a brand like Maker's Mark can do it, any brand can do it.
Amazing. There's some cool things as well, and I know we're running out of time again, but there's some cool things on this bottle that I've noticed. One of them is the fact that the bottom edge is hand torn, which is kind of, I imagine, a nod to Margie's original vision. The other one is that the Star Hill Farm, the icon's gone to 8.
Numeral 4.
That's gone to an 8. Can you tell us what the story is with that?
That's correct. So on Maker's Mark, anything with the red wax, it's S with the Roman numeral 4. So Samuel's stands for the S and 4 for 4th generation whiskey maker. And if you ask Rob, he'll say, well, that was Margie's only mistake, because technically he was the 6th generation. He was the 4th generation that was registered, but they had 2 unregistered distillers in their lineage. So it just changed to S8 to reflect Rob. So this is Rob's vision of whiskey, really pushing the narrative for American whiskey and the story of Maker's Mark forward. So it has gone from S with the Roman numeral 4 to S with the Roman numeral 8, because Rob Samuels is our 8th generation whiskey maker, including those 2.
2, yeah. It's included the 2. That's fantastic.
You got to count them in. Well, it's been so good to chat with you about this beautiful wheat whiskey, and congratulations on it. And it is available in Australia now. You don't have to travel to Kentucky to get your hands on this. You can get it in Australia.
But we recommend traveling to Kentucky too.
Yeah, you should definitely come over. And
Well, if I can tell you one thing, we would love to see you in Kentucky. You are always welcome here.
Yes.
Come see us here at Star Hill Farm
It's
and Maker's
beautiful.
Mark.
unreal. Thanks so much, Blake.
Cheers.
Cheers, y'all.
Thanks for listening. Make sure you're connected with us on TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube, and stay connected with us by clicking subscribe on your favourite podcast app.